Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do an advanced tutorial. It's like a Halo inspired sci-fi wall. So I'm going to take you all the way through. We're going to go through Photoshop to make some masks quick. We're going to go into Substance Designer, and then we're going to finish up in Unreal, and we're going to take you from the whole process from the start to the finish. Now, these types of textures is what got me interested in any kind of graphical design in the first place. In fact, when Doom came out, I was really interested in those, the bump mappy textures, and then when Halo came out, it took it to the next level. So in this one, you can see the results of what we're going to do. Typically now, you don't make quite as many details inside the material themselves, but you can still get away with panels, and you can get away with rivets and things like that, and it'll still look pretty good. And we're going to use parallax occlusion in Unreal to bump it out so it looks really good at the end. So let's just get started. So the first thing we're going to need to do is make some maps in Photoshop. Now, you can make these kind of maps in Substance Designer, but I tend to do it in Photoshop more just because it's a lot quicker and easier. So the first mask you can see is like the basic panels shape that we're going to use. And you can see if you zoom in here, you can see it has these nice rounded edges and nice shapes. So let me show you quick how I put something like that together. So let's just make a new layer. Let's duplicate our background layer by duplicating it. Let's do that. Pull that up behind our new layer over here. So now, one way you can do is just with marquee selection if you want. You can just draw in, say you want to draw in a box or whatever. And there's your box. And now if you fill that in, boom, now you just have a white shape, and you can kind of pull that around if you want. But it's going to have those hard corners. Now the other thing you can do is you could use the shape tool down here. Let's say we want to do the polygon tool. Let's pull out a polygon, let's hit the shift key, and that'll keep it the same in every dimension. And then over here on the right, let's go 6 for sides. And then we can kind of like pop that in or change the size of it. Just change the size of it. And this will just make our basic shape here. You can see the guides will tell me where the center is. So there you go. Go back to our layers panel over here. Now we'll merge all of those together. Our shape, our white box, and our black. Control E to merge them all. And now you'll see it still has those sharp edges. Now, there's a million other ways to like put shapes together, and you can even use this tool here and just kind of draw out whatever you want and then fill that in. But I want to show you how to smooth these corners here. Okay? So now I merge the black and the white together. Remember that. This is all one layer now. And if we go to Filter, Blur, do Gaussian Blur, and I put it at 0.35, and the more you increase that number, the more you're going to round off the corners. So I'll just hit OK here. You can see here the corners are kind of rounded, but they're blurry. Well, to fix the fact that they're blurry, Image, Adjust, Levels, and you can pull these levels handles in. And now you can see it tightens up that mask. All right? So that's how I get the nice, and you can see as you go around, you have the nice corners. So now let's just delete this because we've already made it. I just right click and go delete. And now we're back to our main panel mask. And that's how I made this. I used that, and then I used that, and then I just filled in a little bit for black on these. Now I understand we're going to be running through this pretty quick, but this is more an advanced tutorial. So you're going to have to play around with how to make your maps here. So that's one mask I made. That's for the main panels. And now I made an inset mask too. Right here. I have it named panel mask still, so we'll call it inset mask. And that's just basically the opposite of the first one. So like if you take this one and duplicate it, and then image, adjust, invert, now you get the white on black. And then if you take your marquee selection here and say you just select Say you just select the top there, and then say you select the bottom here. By holding shift, you can select things multiples at the same time. Say we switch this over to black, and we go to fill, and edit, fill, foreground color, and now you see it filled in those edges with black. And then you can come in here onto the sides, and you can fill this in with like black too. So I went a little bit further in from the corner, and edit, fill. Okay, so then that just gives us our inset. I did that to the other side as well, but we don't need to do it again because I've already made one of these. So let's just delete that. So that's my second mask. You can see it right here. Okay, so now we're doing this is a Rivet inset mask that I made visible here. And these are just rounded rectangles. So I'll just put a layer right above the Rivet inset mask. We'll go to our shape tool down here. Go to rectangles. We'll just pull one out. You'll see when you pull it out, it gives you these, how smooth the corners are by pixels. So that's okay. We'll just go back to layers. I'm going to control and click on that, and I'm actually going to delete that layer out. And then we'll just make a new layer. And instead of using shapes, we'll just fill that in here. And now you have a basic shape that you can pull around and put wherever you want. And you can control C and V. So this right now, there's no black layer underneath. You'd have to put a black layer underneath. Plop these in, put them wherever you want them. If you want to be able to see where you want to put them, like maybe you could you could make these a little bit less visible or something, like by turning the fill down. See, now you can see where you want to put it. So I just positioned these where I wanted them, over a black background, and then I control E to merge those together. Okay. So this is the third mask. So if you want to see, if I go fill here, I can kind of show you how it overlays on top, right? And then we have the rivet mask here. Those are just rivets that are overlaying over circles that are overlaying the insets. You can see the insets there. These are just circles. You can make those a million different ways. One good way, just elliptical marquee over new layer. If you hold the shift key, it'll make a standard size circle. It won't warp it in any way. And you can just fill that in, put it wherever you want. So you just do something like this, move it over wherever you want, or you make the right size like that maybe, and fill that in, and you can move it and then copy it on a different layer, then overlay that over a black layer and merge those all together with Control E. And then we may want to make these little insets that go into the rivet. So like if I do that a little bit, you can see how this fits in there. That'd be where your screwdriver or whatever would go. So to do that's pretty simple. I'm going to turn the fill back up here on the layer. We'll just make a new layer. Make like some sort of rectangle like that, and just fill that in. Foreground color, okay. And there you go. And then you can just rotate that around. So edit, transform, rotate, and then rotate it, like if you want to have an inset in there, something like that maybe. So let's just turn this one off and turn all the rest of our masks off except for the rivets. Then we'll turn the fill down on the rivets so it makes it a little bit darker. And then you could just like overlay this over the top, and then just do this on both sides, the same thing, and then put a black background behind it to make your mask. So let's delete that out. I'm just going to put the fills back to normal on these things. And let's just kind of show you those maps again. Those should give you a pretty good idea of how easy it is to make that sort of thing here in Photoshop. Here's our main map. And then we have the inset map, which is like this portion in between. Then we have the insets for where the rivets are going to go. And then we have the shape of the rivets that's going to bump out. And then we have the inset into the rivet, that's where the screwdriver would go. And then when you have all those, we'll save those each out. So like, save this as, I just always save as BMPs just because I can see them in Windows. I like that. So you can see here, here's my main panels mask. Here's the inset mask. I called those rectangles bolt inset mask. Here's rivets mask. Those are the circles. And here's those triangles. So I save those out into these 5 different BMPs. Okay? All right, and once you got that done, we're going to head over into Substance Designer. And I'm going to take you step by step through what we do to get that material in Substance Designer. Okay, now don't get too intimidated. Here we are in Substance Designer, and this is our finished material. Don't worry, it's actually pretty easy. We're going to go through step by step, and I'll show you, what to do. I'm cutting in here to just let you know how we got to this position too. To get to the graph that we want, we go File, New, Substance Graph, and I'm doing Metallic Roughness. You can name it whatever you want. And then just hit OK. And then we can delete out the nodes. We can delete out metallic, and ambient occlusion, and we're going to use the other nodes. So the first thing we're going to start off with is the main shape right here. I'm going to pull this down just a tiny bit. So you can see here I have this bitmap here, right? That's one of my resources. So to get that bitmap, you put spacebar and then you type it in and you go bitmap. And you go from file and then you locate the file that you want to do. So the file that I choose was main panels mask right there. So there it is. And you link it. I have it linked so that if I make changes, it'll make changes in here. All right, so once we get our bitmap into here, we need to do some bevels on it. And if you look at our final product here, well, this isn't necessarily the final thing. This is just the render in Substance Designer. But if you look at this, you can see that it bevels. There's a variety of different bevels for the panel. So this one's a little bit longer. This one's a little bit shorter. This one's even shorter yet. If you go up to the top, there's a big bevel up there. Let's turn this to cube. So it's not, yeah, there we go. So it's not rounding it at all. You can see the bevel here on the top. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to add these bevels to our shape. So we do bevel smooth here. You can see the settings there. -0.005. Smoothness to 2. What that'll do is it'll round out your mask, even if you didn't have it nice and rounded in Photoshop. I like to get it kind of rounded to begin with. And then the biggest thing here is the scale on Y is 6. And what that does is you'll see it makes this bevel on this Y more than it does on the sides. Okay, now I'm doing it out and then a negative because I get the best results for the bevel that way. It means I do need to invert it. So we'll do that bevel and then we'll invert it. Okay, we'll do an invert grayscale. All right, and then we'll do another bevel here from our bitmap, and these will be the settings over here. Now this is just basic all the way through. So this is just your straight up line, right? And now the trick here is I'm going to mix the bigger bevels with the regular bevel, right? So I want to take this, get this big bevel here, so I need to make a mask. So we'll make a mask, and here's the shape I decided to make. It's a square, and here's the settings. Size 1, 0.79 on the Y. And then I transform 2D'd it, so I could offset it a little bit. You want to make sure you set the tiling mode to no tiling up here. So absolute and then no tiling mode, and then do the offset right here. And then what that'll do is it'll combine our two bevels because both of them had similar bevels on the sides, and it'll give us this nice curvy bevel on the top. So that's the start. That's how we get this bevel and then these straight bevels. All right, so now we're going to add even a more fancy bevel. So we're going to go up to the top here, our bitmap into this bevel smooth. And here's the settings for that. Bevel out 0.0035 negative, smoothness 2, scale 1 on the X, scale 4 on the Y. And that gives it a variation. So if I look at that, you can see that on the X, it's a thinner bevel, and on the Y, it's thicker. Okay, so if you go to the X, smaller bevel, bigger bevel on the Y. And again, I'm doing this way because I get the least amount of artifacts when I do the beveling. And you can see that it's not causing too many artifacts. It looks pretty good. So then we'll invert that to get that back the way we want it. So that white is the high point. And there you go. Now we'll blend this with this blend here. Now I don't know if I went over this blend. It's just on copy mode with that original mask. But then the second blend these two in the second blend here, and we're going to make a mask for that. We're going to do this shape. So in the shape, I'm going to go disk, scale 0.51, size 1.48 on the X, and 1 on the Y. And that what that'll do is it'll stretch it out a little bit. Then we'll transform it so we can move it into position a little bit. So we just do the offset at 0.07 in our transform at 2D. And then we run that up into our blend. Okay, and you can see what that does is it blends this cool new bevel with our other bevel, and you can see it does it here and here and here and here. It kind of does it in a circle, but it adds these kind of cuts right here in the sides, which is what we're looking for. Okay, so when you look at it here, that's how we got this transition cut here, by using that shape to blend the two bevels together. All right. Okay, so that's our main shape done. So let's get into rivet insets. So for the rivet inset, we have to pull in the bitmap, and this bitmap is going to be that rivet inset mask that we made with those rectangles. And let me show you the bevel smooth settings. We have out again. This time we have a maximum distance of negative 0.003. Smoothness is the same. I believe the rest of them are the same. Okay. And then we're going to do another bevel smooth. So if you look at that, this one's really tight. We'll do another bevel smooth, which you see adjusts it a little bit and makes it tight on the sides but loose, a longer bevel on the top and bottom here. So you can see how I did that. And the second bevel is negative 0.003, and then on the Y 7.81. And then I'm going to make a shape here just as a quick mask where I'm going to blend those two together. So the shape here, square, scale 1, Y 0.35 should work just fine. Don't need to move it. So you can look at this, and what it's doing is that square is cutting in right here and blending those two bevels. So we have this curvy bevel, the slight bevel, and then the hard bevel here, which gives us this nice kind of inset-y bevel-y look. Okay? So now we take the result of that, this bevel, and we multiply it on top of our main shape bevel right here. And we'll do a blend, and we'll do multiply at 0.25 because we don't want it to cut all the way down to the bottom. Okay? And then I'll do a levels because we don't want this to be completely black and white. We need to cut into it, and we want to be able to put stuff on the top of it if we want to. So we have to change the range, the value range of it. So if you look, here are my level settings there on the right. I just pulled these two handles in. If you want the actual numbers, here's the actual numbers. So just pause and grab those. But otherwise, I pulled the two bottom handles in a little bit to get this over here on our height map. Okay, so now what we want to do is put our rivets into those rivet cut-ins there. So we'll go up to our rivets here, and we'll bring in that bitmap that we made. It's the rivet mask, and those are those circles that we made in Photoshop. And we're going to continue on the tradition of using bevel smooth. And then we'll go down here and you can see max distance negative 0.002. And I believe everything else is mostly the same. Then we'll invert that so we have white on black. And then we'll blend that with this is our other bitmap here. This is our Rivet Mask 2. This is those rectangles. We'll bevel smooth that. This one was a little tricky, so you have to change the max smoothness to get this nice, more rounded version. And you can get negative 0.003. Same thing, bevel out. We're going to blend those two together. We're going to use multiply at 0.18, and you can barely see it in the mask there, but you can see it cut in. And then we'll take this blend and we're going to blend our rivets with our height map. So here's that height map that we leveled, and here's the blend, and we're going to screen because we're putting the lighter ones over it, and we're going to go at 0.34. And you can see that adds our rivet there into our rivet cutout. And if you see here, this is how it bumps it out. So that's a good start, and that should give you some ideas of how to mix and match bevels together, how to bevel things a little bit to get different effects, to make different types of panels. And you can make all sorts of different panels with that. The one thing I want to note is there will be some artifacting in this sort of thing, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's hop into here and kind of zoom in. And you can see there's this kind of artifacting here in the normal map that it's creating. And don't worry, we're going to fix that. We'll fix that later. But for now, we're just going to kind of continue on. So now I want to cut in a little bit way over on the sides. So I made this shape here. See if you can even see. You can see there's this little black edge on the edge of the shape. Okay? So here's the size of the shape, 0.998, and I took that and I blended that with our other blend here. You can see it makes this darkness here, and I did multiply with opacity 1. That just means that this is going to cut down on that edge and make a nice bevel in. Okay? So now we have all the top bevel-y stuff, but we still need the bottom stuff. So let's make a bottom plate. I'll just make a shape here. And we could have made these types of things as masks in Photoshop too, but I like to use both. If it's easier to do it in Photoshop, I'll do it in there. Otherwise, if I can do it pretty easy in Substance Designer, I'll do it in there. So we'll make this shape. It's a square. And we put the Y at 0.14. Transform 2D to move it. Y negative 0.43. And then this one will just use a regular bevel on it. So you can come in and look at it here, and that's the bevel that we're creating there. So the bevel negative 0.01. Okay? For the bevel for that. And then let's plug that into another blend. We keep on blending these together. This one will do screen with opacity 0.75. And you can see what that does is it puts this bottom plate on there with the bevel we just created. Now, let's do the bottom plate inset. That's where it kind of insets in here. You can see that bevel. So let's make another shape. And it's a square again. The Y is 0.06. Transform 2D. Offset negative 0.42. Bevel it with a regular bevel, and then we'll do the distance for that again is negative 0.03, and we'll blend that with our bevels up to this point. You can see it now, and you can see what it does there on the bottom. And our blend mode, subtract, because we're taking the white from it, and opacity 0.31. So this is bottom plate inset. And now let's do a little bit more with that inset here. And let's create a mask so we could put a pipe in there. So in this levels here, I'll level this bevel. You'll see the settings. I just pulled this handle way up here. There's the settings if you want to pause it and use the exact settings. But here is how I pulled the handles. And we'll take this levels and we'll put it into the opacity of this next blend. Keep blending, blend, blend, blend until we get our height map done. And then up here, let's create our pipe. So this time I'll make a shape. This time I used a hemisphere. I scaled it 0.16. And here are the sizes, 20 on the X, 12 on the Y. Then I transformed it. I moved it down, negative 0.42. And then I blended it with this on copy, but only at opacity 0.3. And I used that mask that we created from the bottom plate inset here as the opacity mask. So there you go. That's the pipe bevel. And that's that bevel. So we're getting pretty close here to getting our bevels done, or our height map done. And as you know, if you've watched my tutorials before, that's the most complicated thing. So now let's add this part here. You can see this funky part with all the bumps and the insets there. How did we manage that? Let's go up here. And we don't have this named, so I'm just going to pull a square around it. Let's name it. Let's call it Inset Details. I should have already had that originally, but here we are. So let's grab onto this. This is our tile generator. Now there's quite a few settings in here, so I'll try to get them right, but watch as I go down too. So X amount and Y amount are both at 30. Pattern is brick. Pattern specific 0.32. Variation 0.52. I don't believe I changed anything else coming down here. Here's scale 1.15. Keep on going down. Here's offset random 0.65. Here's random seed. Don't know if I changed that. X and Y random. Those look changed. And keep coming down. Color all the way up. Global opacity. So I think that's all that we've done here. So let's go back from the top. This one's an important one. So here's your X and Y amounts. We have our brick and then pattern specific, which I believe is doing most of the work, are these values here. But otherwise, just take a look and make sure your values match what I've got here. The 0.5 and the 1.15 for scale, and then the offsets. So yeah, hopefully I hit everything right there. So let's take the generator into our levels, and we'll move our white handle down. It looks like these are the settings here if you want to put them exactly, but it looks like I just pulled them down to that point there. And now we're going to blend this with a blue noise fast. So look up blue noise fast. I don't believe there's any settings on that. So we'll just plug those together, and we'll do screen and opacity 0.28 for that blend. And that'll give you this map where it has this blended on that. Okay. So you're blending the blue noise over the leveled one. It'll take that, pull that down, and we're going to blend that into where we've gotten our height map to this point. And you can see we're using this inset mask, which is the one that we made in Photoshop. So there it is over there. So you import a bitmap for that inset mask. We're going to use that for quite a bit of things, but that's how we mask out where we put that craziness stuff. So we'll plug that into this bevel here. This is our final bevel. We'll do copy, and we'll do opacity at 0.15 to really make this a lot lighter. Okay? So there we go. So getting to that point, congratulations. That is a lot of work to get here. That is our height map. And then from here on out, getting from here isn't as hard. So now that we have our height complete, let's try to make some of our other maps quickly. So this is our height map. We'll plug that into a normal Sobel here. And the intensity for that is 6. And we'll plug that into just our normal output. So height into normal Sobel at 6 and into our normal output. That's our normal map. And we'll also just plug our height straight into our height. So here you have our height, plug it into our height output. Okay? So that'll give us our normal map and our height map. So those are 2 maps done. So we have normal map done, we have height map done, that's great. Let's make our emissive mask. That's going to be the part of this texture that glows. So let me show you how we're going to do that. We're going to take the end of that blend of the inset details, plug that into an invert grayscale so it's the other way around. You can see it there. We'll levels that out. You can see I pulled the handles a little bit. Here's the settings for that if you need to pause. Okay. And then we're going to blend that because we're going to make that pipe glow. So we go down to the pipe bevel down here and this transform 2D, and we plug that up into our blend. We blend these two together using our inset mask. This is that mask we used from earlier, so plug that into the blend, and what that'll do is it'll blend these two together, and then we can plug it into our emissive output. Now it didn't create this output for us at the beginning, so all I did was use spacebar and search output, and then in here for the identifier just put emissive. And this is a good, and let me go over the other ones too. This is for normal, put an NRM capital in the identifier. For your output for height, put an HEIGHT in caps, and then back up for emissive, just put in the emissive. So that's, there we go. Now we've got 3 maps done. So what's left? Well, color. So we're going to start doing our color stuff. And let's just start with color base, which is down here, and we'll work our way around. Okay, so color base. I'm going to zoom in to color base here, this uniform color. I'm going to pull up on the screen our hexes. You can put that in there. This uniform color, our hex, is that one there. Close that. Now we're going to do a moisture noise. I don't believe I changed any of the settings on the moisture noise, and we'll blend those two together, and that'll give us this variating color of this blue. That'll be our base color that we work with. We're going to take that and we're going to run that into a blend, and we're going to blend that with a darker color that we're going to use for this inset-y part here. Let me open that up. There's the color there, 24272B. We're going to blend that over the top of our regular gray. And we're going to use a mask that has the rivet and the inset blended together using screen. So if you watch, here's the foreground goes back to our inset mask, and the background goes all the way back to our original rivet mask. Okay? And then it blends those together with screen, and it makes this mask, which we then blend that gray with this darker gray to have the rivets darker and the inset darker. Okay? Now we take that blend and we're going to blend that with, I did a metal edge wear here. Here are the settings for that. I'm not sure what I would have changed. I just like the way the metalware looks, so I'm not even plugging in any other things. I'm just plugging that straight into a gradient map, and then I'm just taking that gradient map and plopping it over this blend so that I can use subtract at a really low opacity, 0.06, to add this kind of grunge wear like that. Okay? You can see it kind of all over there. And we're going to do a little bit simpler color map because I know this is going to be a long tutorial regardless. And feel free to play around, you know, when you make yours. So now that was color base. Let's head over to wear. Okay? So, in order to do wear, we take our normal Sobel here that we have before we plugged into our normal map, and we make a curvature map. We go curvature, we plug the normal Sobel into a curvature. Now, I don't believe I changed anything on that. We're also going to need an ambient occlusion. So I take the height map here and make this HBAO right here. Okay? Don't believe I changed anything on that, but here are the settings. Now we plug both the HBAO, the ambient occlusion, and the curvature into a metal edge wear. Right? And if you look, here are the settings for the metal edge wear over here on the right. Again, I'm not 100% sure what I changed. I'm sharing the wear levels different and the wear contrast. So 0.89, 0.16. Okay? These are kind of in the way. We'll move those down. So now I like this metal edge wear result. I just don't want to have the graininess from the wear on the inside here. So we're going to use that mask again. If you go back here, this inset mask, we'll run that all the way down to here, to this blend, right? And we'll put that at subtract, and it'll subtract out that white part from it. So boom, into subtract. Now we just have the metal edge. You see it right there. Now, we're going to vary that up a little bit. So let's put in this group of nodes here, make a crystal. Here are the settings for the crystal, 12. And then we're going to do a black and white spots. Here's the settings for that black and white, 2.24, 0.48. Black and white spots goes into a slope blur grayscale for the crystal, which adds a little bit of crunchiness to it. And you can see the slope blur settings here, 32.7 or 0.07. And then the black and white spots goes into the non-directional uniform warp here, and it kind of warps it and spins all this stuff around. We'll do black and white spots into both of the intensity and the warp angle, and in the slope blur into that, and then it makes this goofiness here. We'll take that and we'll slope blur this original metal edge wear blend. Take that and we'll do that into here, and what that does is, you can see, it adds all of this kind of wear and grunginess to the edges. I just make that into a gradient map so we can blend that, because that was still grayscale. And I still want to use some of this innie part, so we're going to take the inner part here into a gradient mask just to make it color, and then we'll do a levels on that. You can see my levels adjustment here. I pulled the white handle down, and if you open this up, here are the adjustment numbers. Okay? And now I'm going to blend these two together again using that mask. Remember, we've used this mask a lot, this inset mask, where white is this inside and black is out. I pull that all the way over using these pins to keep organized into here. Okay? And now we blend these two together. And we come up with, and that's just that copy, and this is what we come up with for our wear mask. Okay? So we take this and we blend it over that with a screen at 0.18, and what that'll do is anywhere there's this damage, it'll just lighten things a little bit, and you can see it there. See how it's lightening around the edges? Okay. So now that's wear done. So now we'll go to dirt. So remember, we made an ambient occlusion and a curvature that we ran into wear. We're going to also use those two for dirt. So we'll make a dirt, and we'll run an ambient occlusion and curvature into the inputs. And here are the settings for the dirt. I might have changed a decent amount of this. I know for sure dirt level and dirt contrast. And now let's make just a quick dirt color map that we can use. So we'll make this one color here, uniform color. Here's the number 50402B for that. And this one 594926. Let's do a moisture noise. Don't think I changed anything on the moisture noise. So plug these two together, use the moisture noise to blend it. Just at copy is fine. Then we'll run our dirt all the way over to our blend here. We'll put it in our opacity of our blend. We'll run our dirt blend from here into the top, and then the other one with the gray into the bottom, and we'll use that mask to mask it out, and it'll add just a little bit of subtle dirt to our mask, okay? And while we're here, let's finish off our roughness map, because that's basically all I'm using for our roughness map is our dirt map. So if you plug in our dirt that we made here, pull it all the way down to this levels, and here are the levels handles that I did. If we open this up, you can see the numbers. I'll give you a second to pause it, open it up. Okay, I'll plug this levels into here, and we're going to blend this uniform color over that, because I don't want that roughness in this bumpy inner part. So we're going to blend this uniform color, which is just a grayscale, you see, clicked. And you can see this one's 4D, 4D, 4D. This one goes over the top of that one. And then we use that same mask, this inset mask, that I run all the way down this line into the blend. And that's just copy, and here's our finished roughness map. So that's what we end up with for roughness, okay? And on this roughness map, we just use ROUGH as the identifier. All right, so now we have that done. We have our dirt done, our roughness done. Now we're getting really close to getting our color map done. It would be done, but I do have to do a little fix. So when I got to this point, let's click on the color map here. You can see I didn't like this, how it was so much lighter on the bottom than it was everywhere else. And I didn't want to go through a million different steps, so we just did a quick fix for that. So I grabbed way back here at our bottom plate and this transform 2D, I used this as a mask. And I ran this up and over and around and into an invert, where I made it white on top and black, turned it into a gradient map, and then I just used this to darken our material. So I just blended this over the result of our dirt and everything. And you can see here it was just at multiply 0.03, and it darkened that. Kept it a little different hue, which is what I wanted. I ran that into this blend on the bottom, which is a multiply 0.15, and this is some shadows, so we'll have to go back and take a look at that. I ran our height complete into an ambient occlusion RTAO this time. I turned that into a gradient map. You can see it here. And I ran that all the way over here into that blend that we were talking about. That's the multiply 0.15. And this is our result. Now that was a little dark for our color map, so I leveled it out a little bit. And let's look at those levels numbers. And here's the numbers if you want, or if you want to just pull the handle down, which is probably all I did, was pull the white handle down. And here's our base color. And for base color, we use col, C-O-L. And there you go. I believe we hit everything. So I know this was a complicated one, but we're going to have to kind of keep kicking along. I did name it T, you can see I named the graph here, T-Sci-Wall underscores. And I also have these with their identifiers on it. Okay? So let's export our maps now. So if you right click here, export outputs, It'll do with our identifiers, and you can have all of them clicked here. Everything can be raw except for color and normal. I want sRGB. We'll do it bitmap and just choose your folder and then export outputs, okay? And then once we have that done, we're going to have to head over to Photoshop for a couple other things. So I'll see you over there. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. I'm just going to minimize that. Let's open up those maps we just made. So here are the ones we made: cull, emissive, height, normal, rough. Open those. Okay, so we're going to have to make a couple of fixes. I'm just going to fix a couple of the maps, but you could do kind of it however you want. And I'm going to just show you how we ended up doing that, okay? So I open up a file here I've already pre-made. It's called fixes. And I brought in our maps. So like I have the normal map original and I have a color map original. And I just fixed them. Make sure that you do this as your very absolute end step, because otherwise you're just going to have to go back and do it again every time you export from Substance. But I just want to show you right now how we fixed them. So if you click here, you can come in and you can see these artifacts here on this normal map, right? Now the easiest way to get rid of those artifacts is just use the blur tool. So here's blur here. I have it set to 15 with that kind of brush, strength 50%. Let's just duplicate this quick to show you what I mean. And then you just come in and try to pull crosswise a little bit so it keeps that gradient. Just come in and pull with your blur brush. Okay? And that'll be good enough to fix this normal map. It'll still look a little interesting, but it actually adds interest as if it were tooled in there. So that's all you really have to do. So I did that to both sides. So if you'll see the fixed one here is right here. And I also did that to the color map. You can see the color map here. Let's just duplicate that quick so I can demo. And you can just blur away. But this time it's a little trickier, but you just kind of keep in the middle and kind of pull in. Just blur in until it looks like it's natural what's happening. Okay? Something like that actually looks pretty good. You can see when you zoom out, it looks like it was meant to be that way. So there's the one we just did. There's me with the color fixed. And there you go. So now I've just used these as my main ones, the fixed versions. So I'm going to save this as the normal map so we can get the normal map out of here and get the color map out of here. Save this one as our normal. Save as copy. BMP. And we'll go T-wall, normal, replace it. Okay. And then we'll do the fixed one as color. Now you could fix all the other maps too, but these are the ones that really matter. I think it looks fine without having to do the other ones. Save one. BMP, T-Sci-Wall cull. So those are those two maps. So now it's our color and our normal maps. Let's close that down. So these are the other ones we opened. We have roughness, masks we don't need. Let's just shut that down. Height and emissive. So we're gonna pack those together. Now I haven't done texture packing, but at this point we need to pack these. We're starting to get too many texture samplers. So what I made was, I'll show you, this T-Sci-Wall REHBMP. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that. You can see here on the right, if you go to channels, you can open up the channels, and each one of these is packed into a channel. So REH is roughness, emissive, and height in that order, in the RGB order. So if we go to red, this would be our roughness. Green, this would be obviously our emissive, and this would be our height. Okay? So let me show you how to do that quick. So I'm going to show you one. Let's pretend there's nothing. Control A. I'm just going to fill this in with white, right? All right, so there's nothing in there's just white in the red channel. So it needs to be roughness because it's R. So you go to your rough BMP here. If you go Control A, select all, Control C to copy, select your channel here in the channels and Control V. And there it is. Now it's in your channel. And you can do that with the other ones too, with the height and with the emissive. Okay? And that'll give you a map that looks like this with those channels packed together. So just save that. It's called Sci-Wall reh.bmp. Okay? All right, so now we should have all the maps we need to head over to Unreal. Here we are in Unreal, and we can see our texture in all its glory. We need to make a master material that we're going to then put our maps into. And that's what I made down here. It says mpomc underscore reh underscore n. And the reason why these underscores separate, that tells you that the reh is packed together. All right, so now let's take a look inside of that master material we made, that mpomc reh. Let's open that up. Now you can see I have a couple texture samplers here. I have a color one here, and I have a normal one there. And if you go to our textures, I just pulled in these 1 pixel by 1 pixel textures for that. I pulled in the white version for color. So if you just pull that in, there you go, it turns into a texture sample. And the reason I use these is I just created these in Photoshop, 1 pixel by 1 pixel with white, 1 pixel by 1 pixel gray, and 1 pixel normal. And I did 127, 127, 255 for normal, and I saved them as BMPs, and then you can just pull them in and use them as placeholders. Now you can also put any other kind of texture in there, and I was also told that you can find these in the Unreal stuff. There are examples of these in there. So I pulled the white one in, and we called it color, turned it to a parameter, right click, turn to a parameter, and plug into base color. And I pulled in the normal one, and I right click, turn it into a normal, and I just plugged it into normal. Okay, so now let's head to the front. Now I did a texture object here. To get to a texture object, you have to right click and search it. There it is right there. Okay. Now it's important that it's a texture object because it samples the texture inside the parallax occlusion mapping. So just do this, right click and name it roughness, emissive, height. Now look up parallax occlusion mapping and pop in this node, plug our texture object into the height map texture. Then we'll make 3 parameters. So hold the 1 key down and left click, bonk, bonk, bonk. Convert to a parameter with a right click. And then name this one height ratio, put it at 0.02, name this one min steps at 8, and name this one max steps at 32, and plug them into their respective places, height ratio into height ratio, min steps into min steps, max steps into max steps. And this one determines where our height map is in our texture. So if you hit 4 and you put in a vector 4, it'll open that up. And then you want to put 0010 because ours is in blue. Okay? And then plug this into height map channel there, V4. Now, this runs into a texture sample. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but once you have that texture object, you have to pull your texture in like here, to this section right here. So just pull in your gray one to there. Now we do the texture sample here. So you have to look that up and just look up texture sample and plug in this into our text right there. And then plug in our parallax UVs into the UVs of color, texture sample, and normal. Okay? Now this texture sample will have our other masks. You have the height map doing our parallax here. So red is going to go straight into roughness here. So go from red to roughness. And then green, that's going to be our emissive. So we'll do a multiply and we'll make an emissive color. So 4, convert that to a parameter, call it emissive color. I just put it at white to begin with, but we're going to redo it when we make the actual material. So we'll do a multiply by the emissive color, and then multiply by a parameter called emissive strength. So 1 and left click, emissive strength, right click and convert to a parameter. And that runs into our emissive color. So I hope that's clear. So let's save that. Close that down because we're getting closer and closer. We've gone through quite a bit here. I already have our textures in here because of course I was already testing this out. We can re-import them if we want, or you can go into here and you go import into current folder, or I'll just go on these 3 and we'll just do a re-import just to make sure that we're using the ones we made. Okay, so there they are. Save those. Now that we have them in there, we go to our materials. Now we take this MPOM-CREHN, right click on that and create a material instance. And then I named that material instance, you can see here, MI Sci Wall POM E. So you know what it is, you know it's parallax occlusion mapping, you know it has an emissive mask. So now we'll open that up and we're just about there. Don't you worry. So open that one up. I'll kind of shrink it down a little bit. And now you'll see the settings that I have set here. So for emissive strength, I put in 100, just tick it. Height ratio, that's how much it bumps out. You're going to want to put in 0.25 and then tick all these and put in our textures. Just pull in color, pull in normal, and our roughness, emissive height. And we'll pull those in with all those ticked. And then over here for emissive color, I ticked that on. And you can see here is the color I chose. You can copy the values if you'd like, or just make your own cool emissive color. And just save that. And there you go. And then I pop this material on to a world that we've been creating. It's kind of like a starting with Unreal world. If you need help with that, I have tutorials going over that I'll link in the description. But now you can kind of see in here. Here's our material. Go to game mode. And you can see that the emissive is making the cool glowy light across the floor. And now we have our some neat halo looking ish material. And from here you can, the sky's the limit. We tried to keep it kind of simple so that we could get through it. I'm still sure this is going to be an incredibly long video, and I appreciate that you guys made it through it. You can also see here where we fixed that bump. It looks actually pretty good. So you can see the bumping out. You can see the neat sparkles here in that portion of the wall. And so yeah, I think our results are pretty good. So I wanted to show you one thing that I changed. And I changed the post-process volume for my world. I'll show you here. Now, if you go to Lumen Global Illumination in your post-process volume, which you've created, and make sure that your post-process volume is unbound so it has infinite extents. But here, I ticked off screen traces, because watch what happens. See how, you can see how they kind of get splotchy and blurry, and I just don't like them. So for me, I just click those off and we call it a day. Now, if you don't want these to actually light up your world, you can select the models themselves. Let's see if I can do it here quick. You can select the models themselves and go down to lighting and untick affect dynamic indirect light. And now the material won't light up your world at all. It'll just have the cool glowy effect, okay? So, but we want it to light up our world, so we're just gonna leave it there. And you can see I also have another light that I just pulled in just so that we could sample. So there you go, congratulations. Hopefully that wasn't too ridiculous. I feel like it probably was. I'm not sure how I'll format that type of tutorial in the future. We kept it relatively simple still. You can kind of see how you could do different shapes and neat kind of things, and hopefully those bevels and the glows kind of give you some inspiration on what you want to do like for yourself in the future. I want to thank you for being here. Thanks a lot. I know getting through this one was tough. I am really small channel, so if you like this, please subscribe. And I really hope you have a great day. Take care of yourselves.